The morning air was still thick with darkness when Maya stepped onto the cracked sidewalk of her Detroit neighborhood. At 26, her caramel skin glowed under the flickering streetlights, her worn sneakers whispering against the pavement as she began her daily 20-mile trek to the upscale grocery store in downtown's Silver Plaza Mall. Most folks would have called it impossible, walking past abandoned factories and through neighborhoods where police cruisers slowed just to watch her. But Maya, she walked like she had armor. Her boss, Richard Whitmore III, a Silver Spoon CEO who'd never once glanced at the cashiers in his chain of Organic Haven stores, noticed something odd during a shareholder meeting. Security footage showed the same black woman arriving drenched in sweat at 5:45 a.m. every morning. "Who the hell walks 2 hours to a minimum wage job?" he muttered to his assistant, who shrugged. So one evening, Richard traded his Italian loafers for a hoodie and followed her. What he saw gutted him. Maya's route took her past a diner where the owner once hosed her down for loitering. She skirted a block where a cop had frisked her for matching a suspect's description last summer. Yet when a homeless vet spat at her feet, Maya knelt and offered him her last protein bar. "Ain't your fault the world's mean?" she said, her voice frayed but warm. Richard's throat tightened. At home, Maya's tiny apartment smelled of Vicks VapoRub and determination. Her mama, Ms. Diane, once a gospel singer with lungs like a storm, now wheezed under a threadbare blanket, her COPD meds lined up like soldiers on the windowsill. "You ain't gotta play superhero," Ms. Diane croaked as Maya massaged her swollen ankles. Maya just grinned. "Superheroes wear capes, Mama. I got these." She wiggled her sneakers, duct-taped at the toes. The twist came at dawn. Richard, shaking, intercepted Maya at the employee entrance. "Why walk?" he blurted. Maya's laugh was bitter as burnt coffee. "Bus fare's $2.75 a day, Mr. Whitmore. That's Mama's inhaler." When security footage leaked showing Richard sobbing in his Bentley after firing the store manager for racially profiling Maya, the internet exploded. But Maya, she kept walking. Until the day Richard handed her the keys to a company car, her promotion letter, and a public apology etched in corporate letterhead. "Nah," she said, pushing it back. "Change the policy, not just my life." That night, Miss Diane sang for the first time in years a raspy, "Ain't no mountain high enough," as Maya stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was how hope felt. Heavy, sweet, and long overdue. Maya's fingers trembled as she tied her apron, the fluorescent lights of Organic Haven buzzing like angry wasps overhead. Her muscles screamed from the walk, but she forced her spine straight. Black women weren't allowed to look tired. In aisle 7, she caught sight of Miss Janine, a regular with hands gnarled from decades of cleaning white folks' homes, staring at a pack of chicken like it held the answers to her prayers. The price had jumped overnight. Again. "Need a hand, Ms. J." Maya nudged the pack toward her with a wink. The old woman flinched. Maya knew why. Last month, a security guard had accused Ms. Janine of stealing grapes when all she'd done was touch the bag to check for mold. "Child, you know I ain't got the stamps till Friday," Ms. Janine whispered, her eyes darting toward the cameras. Maya didn't hesitate. She scanned the chicken with her employee badge and dropped it into the woman's cart. "Happy early Friday," she murmured. Ms. Janine's lips quivered. "They gon' fire you over this." Maya just grinned. "Then I'll walk my ass right back in and reapply." The old woman clutched her cross-necklace tears, cutting through the powder on her cheeks. What neither saw was the manager Brad Hodge lurking by the gluten-free snacks phone recording. "Gotcha now, welfare queen," he muttered, zooming in on Maya's name tag. He'd been waiting for this ever since corporate forced him to diversify his staff. He'd dreamed of proving they couldn't be trusted. Across the store, Henry Brown's gut twisted. He'd come to check on Maya after last week's apology spectacle, but this was uglier. He watched Brad strut toward Maya, chest puffed like a rooster. "Stealing company property for your people again, Johnson." Brad's voice dripped syrup. "Guess we know why your kind always needs handouts." Maya's fists clenched, but before she could speak, Henry was there, ripping the phone from Brad's grip. "You're fired." His voice shook with something raw. "And if I ever hear you call a human being your kind again, I'll make sure you never work in this state." Brad's face purpled. "You can't. I own the damn mall." Henry turned to Maya, expecting gratitude. Instead, her eyes burned with a fury that stunned him. "You think this fixes it? That you're some white savior now?" She yanked off her apron. "Fire one racist, pay off one black girl, congrats. The system stays." The silence that followed was thicker than blood. Outside, the sunrise painted the parking lot gold. Maya took her first step toward home, her soles slapping the pavement in time with her heartbeat. For the first time in years, it didn't hurt. Henry's routine became clockwork. 3 times a week, he'd linger near the organic produce section, watching Maya from behind displays of overpriced kombucha. But today, the universe intervened. As Maya knelt to restock quinoa bags, a white woman in yoga pants slammed her cart into Maya's back. "Oops," the woman chirped, not looking up from her phone. Maya's knee cracked against the tile, but she just pressed her lips together and kept working. Henry's coffee cup crumpled in his grip. He was moving before he could think. "You didn't apologize," he said, blocking the woman's path. She blinked at him like he'd spoken Swahili. "Excuse me." Maya's head snapped up. Her eyes locked onto Henry's, not with gratitude, but warning. "Sir, it's fine," she said through clenched teeth. The unspoken message was clear. "Don't make this worse for me." The yoga pants woman smirked. "See, she gets it." She shoved past Henry, her designer purse knocking into Maya's shoulder like a final insult. Henry expected Maya to shrink. Instead, she stood slowly, wiping quinoa dust from her knees. "You enjoy your day now," she called after the woman's sweetness dripping like poisoned honey. Then, under her breath, just loud enough for Henry to catch, "Hope your avocado toast gives you the shits." A laugh burst out of Henry, raw, unguarded. Maya froze. For a heartbeat, their eyes held. Then she turned away, but not before Henry saw the ghost of a smirk tug at her lips. That night, Henry did something reckless. He waited by the employee exit, the Detroit wind biting through his jacket. When Maya emerged, her posture slumped with exhaustion. He stepped into the streetlight. "Wait." Maya's hand flew to her pepper spray. "Jesus, you trying to get shot rich, boy? I want to fix what happened today." Her laugh was hollow. "You can't fix racism with a credit card, Mr. Brown." "I know." He fumbled in his coat pocket. "But I can give you this." The keys jingled between them, a company car, the same model his junior executives drove. Maya stared at the keys like they were a snake. "You think this makes us even?" "No." Henry's voice dropped. "I think it makes me human." The silence stretched. Somewhere a police siren wailed. Finally, Maya snatched the keys. "Keep following me, and I will use this spray." But as she walked away, Henry could have sworn her steps were lighter. Inside the car, Maya found 2 more surprises, a full tank of gas and a sticky note on the dashboard. "For Ms. Janine's groceries, too. HB." Her hand shook as she turned the ignition. For the first time in years, someone saw her, really saw her, and it terrified her more than any walk through the dark. Henry's fingers hovered over his phone screen, the glow casting shadows across his face. He could call his driver. He should call his driver. But the sight of Maya's home, a shotgun shack with a sagging porch, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin, rooted him to the spot. Through the torn screen door, he saw Ms. Diane coughing into a stained handkerchief, while Maya knelt beside her, pressing a steaming towel to her chest. The oil lamp flickered, painting their shadows against the wall like a silent prayer. Then the shouting started. Rent was due yesterday. A man's voice, thick with cheap whiskey, rattled the thin walls. Henry watched as a hulking figure loomed in the doorway, Leon Grimes, the slumlord who owned half the block. "Ain't my fault y'all can't scrape together $800 for a damn shoebox." Maya stood her body, shielding her mother. "I got $600, the rest Friday, I promise." Leon's laugh was a bark. "Friday, bitch, I ain't running a charity." He kicked a chair over, sending Miss Diane's medicine bottles clattering. "Either pay now or pack up." Henry's blood turned to fire. He was halfway to the porch when he heard the click of a safety being thumbed off. Maya had a revolver pointed at Leon's chest, her hands steady as stone. "Touch my mama again," she whispered, "and they'll be scraping your brains off this porch with a shovel." Leon paled. "You're crazy. Try me." The gun didn't waver. Henry's breath caught. This wasn't the Maya who smiled through 20-mile walks or gifted strangers groceries. This was a woman forged in survival. Her kindness, not a weakness, but a choice. As Leon slunk away, Maya collapsed onto the steps, the gun clattering beside her. That's when Henry stepped into the light. Maya's head snapped up. "You," rage twisted her features, "come to gawk at the poor black girl playing house?" Henry knelt eye level with the rusted revolver between them. "I came to say you're right." His voice was rough. "I can't fix racism, but I can fix this." He slid a business card toward her, not his corporate one, but a handwritten note with an address. 3802 Fairview. Paid in full. No strings. Maya stared at it like it might bite her. "Why?" Henry looked past her to where Miss Diane's silhouette swayed in the lamplight, humming a hymn. "Because my mother," he said quietly, "used to sing that same song." The night held its breath. Somewhere, a dog barked. A siren wailed. And Maya Johnson, who'd spent her life refusing to cry, felt something hot and stubborn spill down her cheeks. Henry didn't reach for her. He just stood, brushing dirt from his knees, and walked away. The card remained on the steps, a tiny square of hope in the dark. The water bottle moment. Henry's fingers twitched at his empty pocket. The irony wasn't lost on him, a man who owned half the city stranded over a $2 water bottle. Heat crawled up his neck as he mumbled another apology, bracing for the eye roll, the muttered insult. Of course, another privileged white guy look he'd grown used to in boardrooms. But Maya Olivia just clicked her tongue. "Boy, if you don't take this water," she said, pushing the bottle toward him with a smirk that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. "Ain't nobody gonna die over Dasani." Henry blinked. Her tone was light, but the dark circles under her eyes told the real story. This woman who walked 20 miles daily, who'd pulled a gun on her slumlord last night, was buying him water. The shame hit him like a gut punch. He took the bottle, the condensation cool against his palm. "Olivia," he repeated, testing the weight of her name. It felt sacred. She raised an eyebrow. "You always memorize cashiers' names, or am I special?" The joke hung between them, sharp as a knife edge. Henry could have laughed it off. Could have played the charming CEO. Instead, he leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "You have no idea how special you are." Olivia's breath hitched. For 3 seconds, the supermarket faded, the beeping scanners, the shrieking toddlers, the fluorescent lights. Just them. Then reality crashed back. A manager's voice barked from aisle 3, "Johnson, stop flirting and stock the damn quinoa." Olivia's mask snapped back into place. "Duty calls," she muttered, already stepping away. But not before Henry caught it, the way her fingers trembled as she tucked loose braids behind her ear. The way she'd flinched at that manager's tone. Henry's phone buzzed. Thomas found her file, Maya Johnson, 26, terminated yesterday after altercation with... He didn't read the rest. The water bottle cracked in his grip. Across the store, Maya heaved a 50-pound quinoa bag onto her shoulder, wincing as the burlap scraped her healing blisters. She didn't see Henry storm out. Didn't see him rip the now hiring sign off the mall's front door. but she felt it, the shift in the air like thunder before lightning. Something was coming, and for the first time in years, it didn't scare her. Henry's fingers traced the edge of Olivia's employee file, the words burning into him. Primary caregiver. Sole breadwinner. He could have written a check. Could have bought her a car, a house, a lifetime supply of whatever medicine her mother needed. But he'd seen the steel in Olivia's spine when she refused his car keys, knew pride was the only currency she had left. So he worked in the shadows. The next morning, Olivia's schedule mysteriously shifted. No more closing shifts on Wednesdays when the bus fare would have drained her last $5. The break room fridge stocked real meals instead of expired sandwiches. And when she clocked in a new pair of shoes, waited in her locker, not designer, just sturdy with an unsigned note for the miles ahead. Olivia ran her thumb over the insoles, her throat tight. For the first time in years, the universe felt kinder. Meanwhile, Henry played his role perfectly, the regular guy who just happened to stop by during her shifts. Their conversations were careful dances around the truth. "You always this nice to strangers," she teased once, wiping down a register. Henry pretended to study a granola bar. "Only the ones who buy me water." But the facade cracked one rainy evening. Olivia was counting change for her walk home when Henry appeared under the awning, umbrella in hand. "Let me drive you." "Just this once." She stiffened. "Why?" "Because your mother's arthritis acts up in this weather," he said without thinking. Olivia's face went still. "How do you know about my mother?" Henry's stomach dropped. The truth perched on his tongue. "I own this place. I know everything." But the fear in her eyes stopped him. So he lied. "You mentioned her last week." Olivia searched his face. "No, I didn't." A car horn blared. The moment shattered. "Forget it," she muttered, stepping into the downpour. Henry stood frozen, watching her vanish into the rain, his umbrella still clutched uselessly in his hand. That night, his penthouse felt emptier than ever. The shoes, the vouchers, the shifted schedules, none of it was enough. Because Olivia didn't need a guardian angel. She needed someone to see her. And Henry, he was done hiding. The roasted corn Henry brought that evening sat untouched in Olivia's bag as she replayed the manager's words. "Stay focused." She knew that tone, the quiet warning laced with unspoken accusations. Beside her, Henry's usual easy silence felt heavier, the space between them charged with something new. "You sure you're okay?" Henry nudged her shoulder gently, offering a sachet of water. Olivia took it, the plastic cool against her palm. "Just thinking about how people see what they want to see," she murmured. Henry stiffened. He knew that look, the same one his mother wore when the country club ladies forgot to invite her to brunch again. "Someone said something to you." Olivia's laugh was brittle. "Lillian's been clocking our conversations like it's her part-time job." She mimed, jotting notes in the air. "Day 12, rich boy still pretending he shops here for cereal." Henry's jaw tightened. He'd noticed Lillian, how her smiles never reached her eyes when Olivia helped elderly black customers, how she'd accidentally bumped into Olivia's cleaning cart twice last week. But this was a declaration of war. Olivia sighed, puncturing his thoughts. "Don't worry about it. I've dealt with worse than petty jealousy." But Henry was worried. Because he recognized the pattern, the way systems turned blind eyes when certain people made life hard for others. And suddenly playing the anonymous benefactor wasn't enough. The next morning, Lillian strutted into work late as usual, only to freeze mid-step. Henry stood by the manager's office, not in his usual jeans and cap, but in a tailored suit, the Brown Group logo glinting on his lapel pin. Mr. Paul was practically bowing. "Ms. Johnson," Henry called across the stunned silence, "could I speak with you privately?" Olivia's stomach dropped. This was how he revealed himself in front of Lillian. But as Henry guided her into the office, she caught the smirk he shot at Lillian, the kind that said, "Game over." Inside, Henry dropped the CEO act. "I'm done hiding," he said softly. But this, he gestured to the store, this is yours. You tell me how to fix it or we walk out right now and never look back. Olivia stared at him, this man who'd tracked her walks, bought her shoes, memorized her mother's ailments. The truth should have infuriated her. Instead, she reached for his hand. First you fire Lillian. Henry's grin was all teeth. Done. Outside, Lillian's eavesdropping ear pressed harder against the door. She didn't notice the entire staff gathering behind her, their smiles sharp as knives. Karma, it seemed, arrived with a name tag. The car arrived on a Thursday, a modest Honda Civic with a bow on the hood and a ballot box beside it. Employee of the Quarter, the poster read. Vote for who deserves it. Olivia didn't even glance at it. She was too busy restocking oatmeal when Lillian's shrill voice cut through the aisle. Oh, please, she sneered, leaning against the cart. We all know who's winning this little contest. Olivia kept stacking cans. Guess we'll see. Lillian's acrylic nail tapped the ballot box. Rich boy set this up for you, didn't he? Her smile was venomous. Funny how he conveniently showed up right when corporate started caring about hard-working staff. Olivia's hands stilled. The pieces clicked, Henry's sudden appearances, the meal vouchers, the shoes. Her chest tightened. That evening, she waited for Henry by the employee exit, arms crossed. The moment he rounded the corner, she held up the car keys. Explain. Henry's face fell. Olivia, did you think I wouldn't figure it out? Her voice shook. The anonymous gifts, the voting. Was this all some charity project to you? No. Henry grabbed her hands. I couldn't watch you walk 20 miles every day while he choked on the truth. Olivia yanked free. While you, what Henry, owned the damn mall. The silence was deafening. A streetlight flickered above them, casting shadows across Henry's guilty face. Olivia stepped back. All this time you let me think you were just some guy. Meanwhile, you've been playing God with my life. Henry's voice cracked. I was trying to help. Help, Olivia laughed bitterly. You know what helps respect. Not lies wrapped in bows. She threw the keys at his feet. Keep your car. And your charity. As she walked away, Henry didn't follow. For the first time, he understood no amount of money could fix this. Back in her tiny kitchen, Olivia slammed a pot onto the stove. Ms. Diane watched from the table. Baby, she said gently, that boy's heart's in the right place. Olivia stirred the beans violently. He lied, Mama. Ms. Diane sighed. And you never once lied to protect your pride. The spoon stilled. Outside, thunder rumbled, the first drops of rain hitting the roof like a warning. Somewhere across town, Henry sat in his empty penthouse staring at the untouched Honda in the garage. The keys gleamed on his coffee table next to a single sticky note. Tell her the truth, all of it. He reached for his phone. The storm was coming. And this time he'd stand in the rain. The supermarket hummed with its usual lunchtime chaos when Lillian struck. Olivia was helping an elderly man read a label when Lillian's voice sliced through the noise. Oh, please, she sneered loud enough for customers to hear. We all know why you got that car, Olivia. Olivia's fingers tightened on the shelf. Not here, not in front of everyone. But Lillian wasn't done. She sauntered closer, her voice dripping faux concern. I mean, Henry really. A dramatic pause. Funny how he just happened to show up right before all your little perks started. The elderly man frowned. Olivia's pulse roared in her ears. Then Lillian dropped the bomb. Or should we call him Mr. Brown? The air left Olivia's lungs. Around them, checkout scanners stopped beeping. A cart screeched to a halt. Lillian's grin was vicious. Oh, you didn't know your boyfriend owns this entire mall. She whipped out her phone, flashing a screenshot of Henry's Forbes profile. Guess those modest office worker stories were just another lie. Olivia's vision tunneled. The shelves, the faces, the betrayal, all of it blurred. Somewhere distant, a manager shouted. But all she heard was white noise and the shattering of trust. Then, enough. Henry's voice cracked like thunder through the store. He stood at the entrance tie, loose sleeves rolled up, his usual calm replaced by something dangerous. Lillian paled but doubled down. "Tell her, sir. Tell her how you've been playing. I said enough." Henry didn't raise his voice, but the entire frozen food section flinched. He strode forward, stopping inches from Lillian. "You're fired. Effective immediately." Lillian's mouth opened. Closed. "You can't." "I can." Henry turned to the gawking staff. And for the record, his gaze found Olivia's raw with regret. "She had no idea who I was, because I was too much of a coward to tell her." The silence was suffocating. Olivia didn't wait for the rest. She untied her apron, placed it neatly on the counter, and walked out past the whispers, past Henry's outstretched hand, past the Honda with its stupid bull. Henry caught up to her in the parking lot. "Olivia, please." She whirled on him, tears finally breaking free. "Was any of it real, or was I just your pet project?" Henry's eyes burned. "Every second." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded photo, a snapshot of her laughing over roasted corn sunlight in her braids. "This is how I see you. Not some charity case. This." Olivia stared at the photo, at the man who'd orchestrated her humiliation to protect his own ego. The man who now looked at her like she held the moon. The cold juice dripped from Olivia's braids onto her collarbone, the sugary sting, nothing compared to the humiliation burning through her veins. Lillian's smirk widened as the crowd murmured until Henry's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Look at me." He stepped between them, his tailored suit sleeve blotting Olivia's cheek with a tenderness that made her flinch. When he turned to Lillian, his calm was more terrifying than any shout. "You just assaulted an employee. In front of witnesses." He pulled out his phone. "Shall we test how slippery your hands are in court?" Lillian's bravado cracked. She deserved. What, for being kind, for working harder than you ever have?" Henry's laugh was ice. "Pack your things. Security will escort you out." As Lillian fled, Henry turned to the gawking staff. "Anyone else have thoughts about Olivia's privileges?" The silence was absolute. Then Olivia moved. She untied her ruined apron with methodical precision, folding it neatly beside the spilled juice. Henry reached for her. "Let me explain." But she sidestepped his hand like it was fire. "You lied." Her whisper carried across the frozen aisle. "Every smile, every walk home. Was that just CEO field work?" Henry's face crumpled. "It was real. You made it real." Olivia stared at the man she'd loved, the stranger standing in his skin. The juice on her neck had dried sticky. It itched. Somewhere behind them, a child's voice piped up. "Mama, why's that lady crying?" Olivia didn't wait for the answer. She walked past Henry, past the whispers, out into the blinding sunlight. Henry didn't follow. He stood rooted, watching the love of his life disappear down the sidewalk, her back straight, her steps steady even now. Even after everything. In his pocket, the keys to the Honda Civic dug into his thigh like a punishment. The morning air hung thick with unspoken tension as Olivia pushed through the supermarket doors. The usual hum of scanners and chatter felt muted, replaced by sideways glances and stiff smiles. Even the fluorescent lights seemed brighter, harsher, like they were exposing every raw edge of yesterday's wounds. Lillian's apology still echoed in her ears. "I was wrong." 3 words that changed nothing and everything at once. Olivia had accepted them with a nod, not because she forgave, but because holding on to anger required energy she didn't have. She was stacking soup cans when a shadow fell across the shelf. Henry stood there, tie-less, his crisp white sleeves rolled up to reveal the faint scar on his forearm she'd once traced with her fingertips. 5 minutes, he said quietly. "That's all I'm asking." Olivia didn't stop working. "You don't get to make requests anymore." Henry exhaled sharply. "Then let me show you." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, thick, unsealed. My resignation. Effective immediately. Olivia's hand stilled. The label she'd been holding slipped to the floor. I'm stepping down as CEO, Henry continued, voice low. The board's already approved it. The mall, the company, none of it matters if I lost you by being that person. A customer coughed nearby. Olivia bent to pick up the label, her knees cracking against the linoleum. When she stood, Henry was closer, his cologne, a painful reminder of evenings spent walking home together. You think quitting fixes this? She whispered. No. His thumb brushed the envelope. But it's a start. The truth is, Olivia, I fell for you long before I knew your name. Back when all I saw was a woman who walked 20 miles without complaint, who gave her last dollar to a stranger, who made me want to be better. Olivia's throat burned. She wanted to hate him, needed to, but the rawness in his eyes mirrored the ache in her chest. A commotion erupted near the registers. Miss Diane stood there, leaning heavily on her cane, her Sunday church dress swaying as she pointed at Henry. You, her voice carried like a shotgun. You hurt my baby. Henry paled. Ms. Rose, don't you Ms. Rose me. She hobbled forward, the staff parting like the Red Sea. You got something to say, you say it right here, in front of God and everybody. The store held its breath. Henry straightened. You're right. He didn't look away. I was a coward, but I love your daughter. Not for what she does or doesn't have. Just her. Ms. Diane's glare could have melted steel. Then, with a grunt, she thrust a paper bag at him. Then eat. Henry blinked. Ma'am. Olivia skipped breakfast. Again. She shoved the bag, still warm with fried plantains, into his hands. You want to prove you're serious, feed her. And just like that, the spell broke. Someone snorted. A cashier giggled. Olivia covered her face, torn between tears and laughter. Henry's lips quirked. He pulled a plantain slice from the bag and held it out to Olivia. Truce! The entire store leaned in. Olivia stared at the golden, greasy offering, at the man who'd given up an empire for a chance to be just Henry again. Slowly, she took a bite. It tasted like forgiveness. The admission form trembled in Olivia's hands, the streetlight catching the embossed letters of the nursing school's logo. For years, this dream had lived only in the quiet spaces between shifts and sleepless nights. Now it sat tangible in her palms, real as the man beside her. I can't let you pay for this, she said finally, her voice thick. Henry's smile was patient. I'm not. The scholarship committee did. He tapped the corner of the form where full tuition grant was stamped in bold. Turns out they're big fans of single mothers' daughters who walk 20 miles to work and still help strangers. Olivia's breath hitched. You told them about me. Every detail. Henry's thumb brushed her wrist. Except the part where I'm hopelessly in love with you. That part's just for us. The form blurred as tears welled up. All those years of someday, when mama's better, someday, when money's right, and now. Henry gently folded her fingers over the paper. This isn't charity, Olivia. It's justice. The world owes you this. A breeze ruffled the pages between them, carrying the scent of rain and fried plantains from a nearby cart. Somewhere down the block, Ms. Diane's laughter floated through their open apartment window. She'd known about the application for weeks. Olivia looked at Henry. Really looked at him. The man who'd followed her home in the dark, who'd quit his empire for honesty, who remembered her dreams when she'd nearly forgotten them herself. She kissed him, then soft and sure, the nursing form crumpling slightly between them. When she pulled back, Henry's eyes were shining. First rule of nursing school, she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. No more rescuing me. Henry laughed, the sound warm against her lips. Deal, but I'm still walking you home. And as they stood to leave, Olivia tucked the form carefully into her bag, right beside the keys to the Honda she'd finally accepted. The car wasn't a gift. The scholarship wasn't luck. They were simply what happened when the universe finally looked at a woman who'd spent her life giving and decided to give back. Somewhere ahead, the sidewalk stretched long and familiar, but for the first time Olivia didn't dread the walk, because now, no matter how far she went, she wouldn't be walking alone. The garden's jasmine scent turned cloying. Olivia's engagement ring, a delicate band of diamonds, suddenly felt like a shackle. She stared at Henry, his face ashen under the dappled sunlight. "Tell me she's wrong," Olivia whispered. Henry's throat worked. "The land acquisitions. I was a kid, I didn't—" Mama Rose's cane slammed against the concrete. "Your family ate steak, while mine buried my husband in an unmarked grave." Her voice cracked. "And now you come here with your ring and your lies. I didn't know." Henry's shout startled a flock of birds from the trees. He turned to Olivia, hands shaking. "My father never told me. I swear." Olivia backed away, the pieces slotting into place Henry's guilt. His relentless need to help, the way he'd looked at her mother, was something she'd mistaken for shyness. "It was shame. You followed me," she breathed. "Not because you cared. Because you were atoning." Henry reached for her. "Olivia, no." She yanked off the ring. It hit the pavement with a ping, rolling to rest at Mama Rose's feet. The older woman bent slowly, retrieving it with gnarled fingers. When she straightened, her eyes were dry. "Take your ring, chief's son," she spat, "and take your pity with it." Henry didn't move. The fountain's burble was the only sound in the crushing silence. Then a phone rang. Mama Rose pulled the ancient flip phone from her wrapper, her frown deepening at the number. "Hello," a voice crackled through the nursing school administrator. "Miss Okoro, we've just received a rather large donation in your daughter's name, anonymously. Enough to cover housing books even." Mama Rose's gaze snapped to Henry. "You!" Henry shook his head violently. "Not me. I wouldn't, not after—" Olivia's knees gave out. She sank onto the grass, the truth a knife between her ribs. Because if not Henry, the company, and she realized, the scholarship, it's blood money. My father's blood. Mama Rose clutched her cross. "God forgive us." Henry fell to his knees beside Olivia. "Let me fix this. Please." But Olivia was already standing, already walking toward the car, toward the life she'd built with her own hands. Behind her, the jasmine petals rained down like tears. And Henry Brown, heir to an empire built on bones, finally understood. Some wounds don't heal. They haunt. Somewhere behind them, Miss Diane's rusty sedan pulled up, the passenger window rolling down. "Get in, baby," her mother called softly. Olivia took one last look at Henry, really looked, then turned away. The car door closed with finality. As they drove off, Henry stood alone in the middle of the parking lot, the photo still clutched in his hand, rain beginning to fall. The storm had arrived, and this time no amount of money could stop it. The gate creaked between them like a living thing. Henry's knuckles were raw from digging through files or punching walls, Olivia couldn't tell. In his hands, a battered manila folder bulged with papers. "I found everything," he said hoarsely. "Every lie, every theft." He thrust the folder toward her. "Including this." Olivia didn't take it. The wind flipped the pages open, revealing a faded photograph tucked between contracts, a younger Mama Rose, her arms wrapped around a broad-shouldered man with Olivia's smile. "Marco Okoro." Henry's voice cracked. "My father didn't just steal land. He kept this from you." Olivia's fingers trembled as she touched the photo. All these years, Mama had only one grainy snapshot of Papa half-burned at the edges. Now, here he was, vibrant, alive, preserved in some corporate tomb. What? The word tore from her throat. Henry sank to his knees on the dirt path. "Because monsters don't just take. They erase." He pressed his palms to the ground, the same earth his father had stolen. "But I can give it back." From the folder he pulled a deed. Okoro family land, full restitution. Olivia's knees buckled. The numbers swam acres, compensation millions. Enough to buy 10 homes, 100 nursing degrees. Mama Rose's shadow fell across the papers. "Money won't bring my Marco back." Henry didn't flinch. No, ma'am. But it can build the clinic he dreamed of. The one he petitioned for before his voice broke. Before my father had him arrested. A moth batted against the porch light. Somewhere a radio played the old gospel song Marco had loved. Olivia stared at the man she'd loved, now haloed in fireflies and guilt. You think this fixes it? Henry shook his head. I think it's a start. He placed the deed gently on the step between them. The land's already yours. The money's in escrow. No conditions. No brown name attached. Mama Rose made a sound like a wounded animal. She snatched the photo, clutching it to her chest as decades-old sobs racked her frame. Olivia watched Henry really watched him. The Henry who'd quit his company, who'd walked these streets in borrowed shoes, who'd loved her, knowing it might destroy him. The porch light flickered. Slowly, she reached down. Not for the deed. For his hand. Henry's breath stopped. Olivia laced her fingers through his, feeling the scars, the sweat, the weight of what they'd lost. What they might yet rebuild. Somewhere in the darkness, a nightbird sang. And for the first time in 20 years, Mama Rose let herself weep for Marco, not in grief, but in something perilously close to hope. The ledger of loss. The gate creaked between them like a living thing. Henry's knuckles were raw from digging through files or punching walls Olivia couldn't tell. In his hands, a battered manila folder bulged with papers. I found everything, he said hoarsely. Every lie, every theft. He thrust the folder toward her, including this. Olivia didn't take it. The wind flipped the pages open, revealing a faded photograph tucked between contracts, a younger Mama Rose, her arms wrapped around a broad-shouldered man with Olivia's smile. Marco Okoro. Henry's voice cracked. My father didn't just steal land. He kept this from you. Olivia's fingers trembled as she touched the photo. All these years, Mama had only one grainy snapshot of Papa half-burned at the edges. Now here he was, vibrant, alive, preserved in some corporate tomb. Why? The word tore from her throat. Henry sank to his knees on the dirt path. Because monsters don't just take. They erase. He pressed his palms to the ground, the same earth his father had stolen. But I can give it back. From the folder he pulled a deed. Okoro family land. Full restitution. Olivia's knees buckled. The numbers swam acres, compensation millions. Enough to buy 10 homes. 100 nursing degrees. Mama Rose's shadow fell across the papers. Money won't bring my Marco back. Henry didn't flinch. No, ma'am. But it can build the clinic he dreamed of. The one he petitioned for before his voice broke. Before my father had him arrested, a moth batted against the porch light. Somewhere a radio played the old gospel song Marco had loved. Olivia stared at the man she'd loved, now haloed in fireflies and guilt. You think this fixes it? Henry shook his head. I think it's a start. He placed the deed gently on the step between them. The land's already yours. The money's in escrow. No conditions. No brown name attached. Mama Rose made a sound like a wounded animal. She snatched the photo, clutching it to her chest as decades-old sobs racked her frame. Olivia watched Henry, really watched him. The Henry who'd quit his company, who'd walked these streets in borrowed shoes, who'd loved her knowing it might destroy him. The porch light flickered. Slowly she reached down, not for the deed, for his hand. Henry's breath stopped. Olivia laced her fingers through his, feeling the scars, the sweat, the weight of what they'd lost. What they might yet rebuild. Somewhere in the darkness a nightbird sang, and for the first time in 20 years, Mama Rose let herself weep for Marco, not in grief, but in something perilously close to hope. The lead judge raised a hand for silence, his eyes locked on Sonia. Child, tell us, how did you learn this dish? Sonia didn't flinch. From Mommy's stories. And this. She pulled a tattered notebook from her apron pocket, its pages stained with decades of oil and spice. Grandpa wrote everything down, even how the palace servants cried when he left. Kofi scoffed. A child's doodles prove nothing. William stood abruptly, his phone flashing. Actually, he nodded to the screens where footage from a 1980s newsreel now played a much younger version of Regina's father in royal kitchens preparing the exact same dish. The timestamp was undeniable. The final blow. Kofi lunged for Sonia's notebook, but the head judge intercepted him. Enough. His voice carried the weight of a gavel. We've seen the truth, and we've tasted it. He turned to Sonia. This dish isn't just technically perfect, it's alive. You didn't copy a recipe. You honored a legacy. The other judges murmured in agreement. One even removed his hat, a gesture reserved for culinary masters. Kofi's face purpled. You're all fools, that street rat doesn't belong. Enough. William's voice cut like a blade as security moved in. You're done. As Kofi was escorted out, the lead judge lifted Sonia onto the judging table. The crowd erupted. Flashbulbs popped. But Sonia only had eyes for her mother, who was crying openly now, and for William, who mouthed, "That's my girl." The revelation. With the trophy in her arms, nearly as big as she was, Sonia tugged the mic down to her level. "I want to thank Mommy and Grandpa watching from heaven." She hesitated, then grinned. "And my daddy, who finally came home." The room froze. William's breath caught. Regina, though startled, gave a tiny nod. Cameras swiveled as William stepped onto the stage, gathering his daughter, their daughter, into his arms. "I should have been there from the start," he said loud enough for the world to hear. "But I promise you this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you both." Regina joined them, and in that moment, with the spotlight warm on their faces and the scent of Phoenix spices in the air, the past didn't matter. Only this. A family forged in fire rising together. 6 months later, the Sonia Grace Culinary Institute opened its doors, not in some gleaming high-rise, but in the very apartment where Regina once cooked over a single burner. Its first exhibit, a glass case holding 2 tattered notebooks, her father's recipes and Sonia's first cooking journal scribbled in crayon. And every morning before students arrived, William could be found in the demonstration kitchen, burning toast, laughing as Sonia corrected his knife skills while Regina rolled her eyes and fixed his mistakes. Because some legacies aren't about perfection. They're about showing up. The space between... Mama Rose's hands gnarled from years of scrubbing floors, and clutching rosaries cupped Olivia's face. "Child, look at me." Her thumbs brushed away tears. "Hate is a heavy thing to carry. You sure you want to hold on to it?" Olivia's breath hitched. "It's not that simple. Never is." Mama Rose reached into her wrapper, pulling out a faded photo, the one Henry had brought. Marco grinned up at them, young and vibrant, his arms around a sapling. "Your father," she whispered. "He believed in second chances, even for those who didn't deserve them." Olivia traced her father's smile. "What would he say about Henry?" Mama Rose's laugh was soft. "He'd say that boy's got more courage in his pinky than his daddy had in his whole body." She tucked the photo into Olivia's palm. "And he'd tell you to stop overthinking and follow your heart." Outside, the first raindrops of the season pattered against the tin roof. Olivia stood abruptly, grabbing her raincoat. Mama Rose arched a brow. "Where you going in this storm?" Olivia paused at the door, her reflection wavering in the rain-streaked glass. "To see if love can grow in the mud." Henry stood ankle-deep in the freshly turned earth of the community center site, his white dress shirt ruined by red clay. The workers had left hours ago, but he couldn't stop, not until every foundation post was set straight. "Your father would have hated this." Henry whirled. Olivia stood under a tattered umbrella, her feet bare, her eyes blazing. Rain sluiced down her arms, mixing with the dust on her skin. "He hated getting his hands dirty." Henry admitted, voice rough. Olivia stepped closer, the mud squelching between her toes. "I meant the humility, the atonement." She gestured to the half-built walls. "This would have killed his pride. Henry's laugh was bitter. Good. The rain fell harder, drumming against the corrugated metal roofs nearby. Olivia's umbrella tipped, sending water cascading down Henry's back. He didn't flinch. "You really didn't know," she said softly. Not a question. Henry shook his head. "But I should have. That's the worst part. I should have dug deeper." Olivia studied him, the clay-streaked jaw, the blistered hands, the way his shoulders sagged under invisible weight. This wasn't the polished CEO or the charming stranger. This was Henry stripped raw. She dropped the umbrella. Rain plastered her braids to her cheeks as she reached for his hand, their fingers tangling in the storm. "Show me." Henry blinked. "What?" "Show me how love grows from broken things." And there in the wreckage of their past, with the sky weeping above them and the earth softening beneath their feet, Henry Brown finally understood. Forgiveness wasn't an ending. It was a foundation. The walk home. The morning of the wedding, Olivia laced up her old sneakers, the same ones she'd worn on every 20-mile trek to work. The leather was cracked, the soles thin, but she couldn't bring herself to toss them. Not today. Mama Rose watched from the doorway, her Sunday-best wrapper rustling in the breeze. "You sure about this, baby?" Olivia straightened, smoothing her simple cotton dress. "He walked through fire for us. Least I can do is walk this road one last time." And so she did pass the abandoned factories where she'd once counted steps to distract from blisters, past the diner where the owner had refused her service years ago, past every scar and memory that had shaped her. Halfway there, a familiar figure appeared on the horizon. Henry stood waiting at the crossroads in a wrinkled linen shirt, his own shoes dusty from the walk. No limousines, no entourage. Just a man who'd learned that love wasn't about grand gestures, but about showing up blistered feet and all. "You're late?" he teased, offering his arm. Olivia hooked hers through it, their steps falling into sync. Had to take the scenic route. The village square had transformed. Strings of lanterns swayed between the newly rebuilt market stalls. Children giggled as they tossed uba petals purple as the yams now thriving on reclaimed land. And at the center stood Mama Rose beneath a canopy of jasmine, her hands clasped tight around Marco's photograph. As Olivia reached the altar, Henry turned to face her, his voice cracking. "You came." Olivia squeezed his hands, the hands that had torn down malls and planted seeds and held her through the storm. "You waited." The officiant cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" But Henry wasn't done. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a worn piece of paper, Olivia's original job application from the supermarket, the one where she'd scribbled "dream to be a nurse" in the margins. "I kept this," he admitted, "to remind me that the most extraordinary people often come in ordinary packages." He pressed it into her palm. "Your nursing school starts next month. Full scholarship, no brown money attached. Just a committee who believes in second chances." Olivia's tears fell freely now. She unfolded the paper to find a new line added beneath her dream in Henry's messy scrawl, "Dream to walk beside you every step of the way." When they kissed, the crowd erupted not in polite applause but in ululations and drum beats, and the kind of joy that comes when broken things are mended with gold. And as they walked back down the aisle together, Olivia realized something. The 20 miles hadn't been the journey. They were the destination.